them whatever they give. And in the beginning, Buddha hesitated to include women in the monastic order as nuns, because he was quite worried in terms of society. The society would think that they were men and women together off in the forest. They must be doing all sorts of naughty things. And so he hesitated at first, but then when he accepted women into the order, he set up very, very specific rules to make sure that that the people weren't violating it within the order, and that society wouldn't get the wrong idea in terms of why there were both men and women in the monastic order. So you couldn't have a monk and a nun together just by themselves. There always had to be more than one nun together, sort of chaperones, these sort of things. These type of things are very practical. And all of this teaches us a lesson. Right? They can't sit on the same seat or the same bed together, these sort of things. And so what it teaches us is, on the one hand, Buddha rejected all the glories of society to find the truth. But on the other hand, he doesn't want to offend society. Doesn't want them to get the wrong idea. And so, although one might not agree with all the principles of the society in terms of their values, nevertheless, you don't want to alienate society. This indicates very well. Politicians perhaps need to learn about this. And perhaps they do. Perhaps they do. How to be diplomatic, how not to offend, how not to cause suspicion, and so on, unfounded suspicion, even though you might disagree with what society's values are. And one thing I find so wonderful in Buddha's life is that he had a cousin who really disliked him, Devadatta, and he always caused trouble with the Buddha. And actually, if you look further in the Pali Canon, a lot of people caused trouble with the Buddha. A lot of people didn't like him. So it teaches a very valuable lesson, which I always tell my students, which is that if not everybody liked even the Buddha, what do you expect? That everybody's going to like you? So, of course, there are going to be people that don't like us. There's going to be people that we can't please absolutely everybody. Buddha wasn't able to please everybody. And so be realistic. And don't get depressed. And then Buddha passed away. And a very interesting thing in the life story, it says that Ananda, that's one of his main disciples, had the opportunity to ask Buddha not to pass away. But somehow he didn't ask. And so Buddha passed away. And this teaches us that Buddha only teaches when he's asked. And Buddha only stays when he's asked to stay. And if nobody wants him around, he leaves. That's a very good lesson for us. If others don't want our help, others don't need us, don't push yourself on them. There are plenty of others elsewhere who might be much more receptive to us and might wish our help. Very good lesson. So we can look at the Buddha's life and try to find all the historical facts, and in this year he did this, and this date he did that, and so on, and that would have its validity within the context of Western view of history. Very nice. But even that would be quite difficult to get any sort of certainty that this happened in this particular year, and so on. But anyway, that has its importance. Or we can look in terms of what lessons can we learn, in terms of when you tell a story or a legend, the various symbols, the things that are used in it, like in a Jungian analysis. What does that indicate to us? What does it represent? Very helpful. And we can look at it in a larger Mahayana context with the presentation that Buddha became enlightened ages ago, many lifetimes before, and is going to go on for endless eons in the future to teach us the theme of universality, that you want to be able to help others forever. This is main Mahayana theme. It doesn't just end when you die. And so what does that teach us? Even if we don't accept rebirth, which perhaps most of us don't, nevertheless, it teaches us whatever we're doing now is a result of all the generations that came before us. And if we're trying to do something positive in the world, don't just think in terms of my generation, but think in terms of future generations. Endlessly into the future, think big. That's what it teaches us. And then we have the Tantra presentation. Tantra presentation is quite fantastic, actually, if you look at it. Buddha appears, he's teaching in one place, the teachings on the deepest philosophical themes, and in another place he's appearing as this figure with 4 faces, and from each face he's teaching something different simultaneously. Quite extraordinary. But what does it indicate? It indicates that all the various aspects of the Buddha's teachings, and there's many, many different kinds of Buddhist teachings that we'll find as we look at the history, that all of them fit together, all coming from the same source. Now, whether that's a historical source, as I've been trying to indicate, is irrelevant. They come from the same basic ideas. And you can give it a historical presentation, you can give it another type of presentation. So we find basic principles that are present in all the various types of Buddha teachings. Whether we think of the Theravada presentation, the Mahayana Sutra presentation, the Mahayana Tantra presentation, all the various things, there are these basic principles, and actually they're represented by the various arms of these figures and the number of faces and so on. It's all there. In these Buddha figures, they have many arms, and they have many faces, and they have many legs. So the basic Buddha teachings was in terms of the 4 Noble Truths, 4 faces. Everything represents something, and so on. So we have our presentation, then, of the life of the Buddha. This is, I think, all that we have time to go into. But this is the approach that I would like to take through our topics these days that we are together, is what can we learn from these topics? Not the actual facts, the facts you can read, and many presentations of it, but what is the purpose of it? What's the application of it? And that way we get, I think, a deeper appreciation